Greetings, MASKast listeners. It has been a good, as the urban terminology right now has been, it's been a good long minute for us being together, talking about Mask. Want to personally apologize to all our fans out there. We've been kind of, as Jason said, just off mic. It's been an ebb and flow. We've been on other projects. We've had a lot of life situations come up. We took a little break, not just from Agents of M.A.S.K, but actually from
Everything.
Rediscover the 80s, our other entity, for a short time. And it's just, we kind of looked at the clock and said, you know what? It's been too long. And with the news that we're talking about, the latest Hasbro update, as we're going to call it, we just wanted to get back on the podcast train and MASKast it up. And on the other side, we have Jason, the masked hero over there. I don't know which mask you wear today, but you usually have Bruce Sato's every now and then. The lifter.
Yeah, sometimes. Sometimes I like a little more destruction than
Well,
just
right
lifting
now you've got the
objects.
look. I think you could pull off a little sly racks and get the stiletto going.
There you go. Yeah, I'll shoot some darts at some people. Pin them against the wall.
Fire! At least say it right. Don't do stupid stuff like some of them do.
You want a quote? I don't think so. Anyway, yes, it's been a minute or two, or several tens of thousands since we've been back with you. And yeah, I mean, part of it has been some life things. I've had a job change last summer, which pretty much has put me in a position where I cannot be online as much as I would like to during the day, which was when I was mainly blogging for Agents of M.A.S.K and some of my other ventures online, to be honest. So yeah, I've had to curb a lot of that stuff that I was able to do at my previous job while managing other things. But yeah, it's time to get back in. I thought this would be a good way to just be kind of free flowing tonight. No real agenda other than talking about what Hasbro's been doing with our beloved property, or not been doing, and just kind of get a feel for what they're doing, or what vision, what approach they want to have to all their properties they've been sitting on for a while, and kind of get a temperature of what they've been doing over the last year or so. And I've just kind of pulled together several links and news stories that have hit the web over the last, say, month or so. And it's been sad. It's been kind of sad from a M.A.S.K fan's standpoint. Some of the things that we'll be talking about tonight. But yeah, it's been almost 2 years since Hasbro announced this, what we've been calling the Cinematic Universe project, with G.I. Joe and M.A.S.K and ROM and Visionaries and Micronauts. I think that was all of them. This was a big deal. This was a big deal to us. And I remember even podcasting last year, when are we going to get a schedule? When are we going to get an update? There's been a couple small stories about the writer's room and maybe some of the things that have been going on there and who's involved and that sort of thing. But haven't really gotten much over the last 2 years. And finally now, we've gotten some news out of that writer's room, and have a small little film schedule, but it's not really what I was anticipating. I'd kind of figured, well, I guess before we get into that, some things had popped up that kind of surprised me too. This Stretch Armstrong series on Netflix. Have you seen that, Wyatt?
I
You checked it out
I
yet?
haven't seen the cartoon, but I have seen. I've seen it flipping through
Right.
Netflix.
I have I have too. I have not hit the play button on that yet, and I'm not sure I will. But um, that was kind of a head scratcher. That it was essentially coming, and it finally hit Netflix. And I don't know. I think it's maybe 8 or 10 episodes or something to start. Um, so that was kind of puzzling that they went and put an animated series to Stretch Armstrong, which I thought was more or less I wouldn't call it dead property, but we don't see Stretch Armstrong in the stores right now.
Actually, if you look at Target,
Oh, really?
at least on the end caps, at least my Target does this. They have a little, I'll call it end cap retro for two of them. So you got the one end cap that has like the Fisher Price and sometimes board games. So you'll see the retro, pull the string, spin the little
Right. I've seen those. Hmm.
rotating, dog and cat and sounds, whatever. You got the Fisher Price, cash register and the old plastic record player.
We actually bought one of those cash registers for my daughter.
Oh yeah. And then I just saw they have an original or a remake rather of the Strawberry Shortcake, and then they have a Stretch Armstrong and something else. I can't remember now, but I've seen it like a retro, a replica
Hmm.
retro of the Stretch Armstrong. So it's at least in that Target. Um,
Yeah.
it's trying.
Yeah. I've seen those too. And um, I don't know. I'm assuming this is like a new concept or new idea based around Stretch Armstrong and not like, just a straight remake from something that existed before. But I was uh understandable for them to go for, like, they just actually released to the theaters a My Little Pony movie, which is huge for them right now. And they're continuing on the brands Transformers and Star Wars obviously is huge for them right now. I'm talking as a toy company.
Right.
And then all of this is kind of an offshoot, but it was, I don't know, that the Stretch Armstrong thing to me was kind of weird for them to put out unless they were just trying to keep that new Boulder Media Studio busy, in the meantime while they're
Could
developing
be.
other stuff.
I'll
That
tell you,
I
not
believe it's in Ireland.
go on a not to go on a too big of a bunny trail, but if you look at Netflix, a lot of their cartoons, a lot of them are
Mhm.
done in the DreamWorks production. That's the main uh,
Yeah.
distributor. So I imagine Hasbro is doing something similar with Boulder Media, just keeping them busy, pumping them full of cartoon ideas.
Right. And it's, well, obviously Netflix is the largest of the streaming companies out there right now, and Hasbro's channel on Roku is kind of a joke. I mean, it does have, and I've been watching actually lately the G1 Transformers series. It looks like in full. I haven't gone through to check and see, make sure there's all, was it 4 seasons, 4 or 5 seasons? Anyway,
It was four.
um, but there's a commercial interruption every so often on them. Not really at the point where you'd think there'd be a commercial, but anyway, so they have mainly classic shows on their channel there. So there's a few Transformers, there's GI Joe seasons 1 and seasons 2, not in full. Um and then I think Conan the Barbarian or something like that. Anyway, uh so it's weird that they haven't tried to maybe really beef up their own, streaming channel with some of the stuff they're doing through Boulder Media. But again, you're not a ABC or CBS or some place like that can really have a ton of shows to throw in there. Um, I could argue that Hasbro Properties has a lot of different
I would think
animated,
they'd have
and
quite the library.
they
Maybe
put in,
not as vast as maybe Disney or ABC or someone like that, but still they'd have a
yeah.
fair enough library to my thought anyway.
Yeah. So yeah, it's been, over the last couple of years, it's been just kind of waiting on what they're going to do beyond Transformers, because they've got the Bumblebee movie coming out this year. That's been announced for a while, and then they've announced another Transformers movie, number 6, I believe, next year to be released. They like releasing those every 2 years or something. So we knew those were, and that series has been hugely successful, at least at the box office worldwide. I think it's over 4 billion now that those films brought in. So naturally they're going to keep on making them, and it makes sense. And they make, you know, uh, the Transformers toys seems like a different, well, based on the movie and all the different animated shows that they've got going on too. So it was just kind of a mystery to me what they're going to do with this universe project and how they were going to release it. And I think I remember kind of leaning on GI Joe as the one, and I think we both kind of were. And even with Bill and Eric that we had on the show, we were talking about bring back GI Joe, and that will be the launching point for some of these other properties. And according to their schedule, which was released back, I think this was back in December. Got the Hollywood Reporter link. I'm going to bring it up. But what they gave us 4 films that they're planning to produce. The first being a GI Joe film. And now this is not necessarily, at least from what I've been reading on the web, a sequel to the 2 movies they've already created. And that would just please me to death if it wasn't. And they kind of made it more geared towards the real American hero fans and not necessarily this and battle that they had 2 movies. The second one was a bit better than the first, but you still don't get all of the characters that you could have, in a GI Joe movie. So right now they're just simply titling the movie GI Joe, or I've seen some places say an unnamed GI Joe movie that's supposed to come out in March of 2020. So you've got a little over 2 years for that to come out. And then they're doing a Micronauts movie. That's supposed to come out in October of 2020, followed up by a Dungeons and Dragons movie in 2021 in July. It had been tied to Warner Brothers, but apparently that's no longer, at least from what I've read. And then there's a mystery movie, an untitled movie, and also in that year, October of 2021. So I'm not sure why they're keeping that a secret, or maybe they haven't decided which way they're going to go with that,
Right.
at this point. So I don't know. What's your thoughts kind of reading that list based on 2 years of waiting on what they were going to do?
Well, 2 years waiting on what they're doing. It's been what, about 6 years since we've been waiting because we started our little script project.
Well, true.
But I guess just reading the list, I guess because GI Joe was such a bigger, it seemed like a bigger entity franchise. I'm not surprised that they're redoing it in one way if they're going to do it as a cartoon, but I am surprised if they, in a way, because they just exhausted it, in my opinion, with what, 3 or 4 live action GI Joe movies, with The
2.
Rock and all that.
There's just
But
2.
how many Spider-Man movies have we seen in the last like 10 years that it's a rebirth of a rebirth of a rebirth? I'm like,
Yeah.
how many
Different actors. And, yeah.
different actors, different storylines, but which way are you going to spin it? That's the right story.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, it's. I guess I am surprised. I'd like it to be some kind of animated movie, cartoon, and get the probably more updated, but get kind of the similar cast. So you see, Duke and the whole nine,
Yeah.
just doing their thing on GI Joe. Micronauts, though, I know reading just skimming through our Facebook posts, that was kind of um, a blow to the stomach, really, getting that news. Uh, and I don't think it had that big of a following. I can't say that Mask had a bigger following, but um, scanning what we know, we've seen, Micronauts has a little bit smaller fan base than at least Mask. And
Oh yeah.
I just don't know why they did. And I know we've discussed offline that maybe it's the fact that there was someone in this management that was his baby. He loved Micronauts as a kid and he wanted to put it on first. Good on him. If I were in Hasbro in that level, I think I'd be, throwing
Yeah.
Mask at it. That's just my take. But maybe they're just seeing what sticks. Maybe it's just that whole thing of let's take a chance, see what stays, what has a good following, if it's worth it, moving it on as another franchise. Dungeons
Yeah.
and Dragons, I never followed it as a kid, um, so I don't really have I guess, a good argument for it, except that again, I know Dungeons and Dragons is huge, mostly as a board game or some kind of card game. I know there was a
They did a
what?
short-lived animated series. I think it was just like 9 episodes or something
Yeah, and I
back in
have
the
it pulled
day.
up here on IMDb. Actually was up for 3 seasons. It looks like 27
Oh really? Oh wow.
27 episodes. One that was unproduced, so I guess there's a mystery 28th. Um, but nonetheless, Peter Cullen voiced it. So did Frank Welker. Uh,
There you go.
but that aside, I know it had a fair gathering, and I would actually be more. I would have been more surprised or more in line if they would have popped that up before Micronauts because of the fan base. I know, like I said, it has the fan base, but this untitled movie, maybe I'm usually the pessimist, but I'm being optimist in this one. Maybe they're actually got something in the works for us Mask fans. Maybe it's a mix between GI Joe and Mask, or where they introduce Matt Tracker or a small team and kind of do kind of like the comic book matchup
Mhm.
there. But I don't. It's out of order for me, but I'm being partial. I'm a mask more masked than GI Joe even. So um, I think they're going about it in the wrong order.
Yeah, and
Who knows?
I think what I read on one of the websites that was covering that story, uh, dealing with Micronauts, was well, there was another story that came out that we'll talk about in a little bit here, but from what I was reading, it was based on what the writer had came up with, and everybody was essentially in agreement that that was like the best story out of that writer's room or something like that. So, maybe that's why Micronauts was chosen, just based on uh, they thought this was the most relatable movie to a live action film. But yeah, I mean, again, to your point, they've made tons of Spider-Mans. They've reinvented Batman,
Yes, they have.
so many times with so many actors, but yet I'm still, they still get my money every time they release a movie
True.
because I like the character, that's just the thing. And with GI Joe, I don't think, like I said, I don't think any of GI Joe fan would be miserable at all over trying to just start from scratch with the Rock or without the Rock. Um, you want a big star in there, and maybe he is still Roadblock, but just start over, and try to do it again more relatable to what everybody knows GI Joe to be, which is mainly the Real American Hero series in comics, and you know, bring Larry Hama on as a consultant or something to help you write the story. Uh, but I think the fans would much more appreciate it, and they'd get a much better movie by going deeper into the roots and not trying to have GI Joe in the modern, necessarily in the modern world. I'm not saying you got to do a movie in the 80s, but it's just too, when you try to pull GI Joe out of the 80s and put it into today's world, everything just becomes kind of bland and kind of mashed together. Whereas what made GI Joe so great back then was all the diversity in the characters on either side, you know. So I really am banking that this is good. And to your point on the Untitled movie, I maybe it is Untitled because maybe they are thinking about combining GI Joe and Micronauts and what they built from those two movies, and then bring in something else from that shared universe. So that could be a the Avengers of the Hasbro world
Right.
movie. You know, they just haven't decided on what they how they exactly want to bring all that together. So that's probably our best bet right now for getting Matt Tracker on the big screen, because uh, I've seen several stories. Some were more or less, I don't know. It seemed like this is a rumor. Some call it official, but it sounded like what they've done is they've taken some comments from one of the writers and made it into the story that pretty much Mask and Rom are dead as far as onto the big screen. And you know, I know we're biased because we love Mask, and you know, we've much GI Joe and Transformers elements of both of those really be relatable to a toy shelf. Um, but you're taking Micronauts, which was a property, you know, back in the mid to late 70s. It was a pretty successful toy line, but there was no supporting. There was just a comics that they published pretty much after the toy line had already been listing them in the early 80s, and there's been a couple of different publishing companies that have brought them back, and you know, obviously IDW does Micronauts now, the shared universe. But gosh, I mean, Rom is this huge freaking robot that battles essentially zombies. You know, who wouldn't want to see a big screen with zombies being, you know, through the roof right now?
Right.
And you know, that just seems like you've got to be able to write a decent movie like that. I mean, even make it R rated, and I could, you know, enjoy that or something. But and then of course Mask, it's basically writes itself. You
Right.
know, it seems like those two would fit better on the big screen than these little tiny heroes and their tiny planet somewhere and some story of how they make it to Earth. And I don't know. It seems like a Honey, I Shrunk the Kids superhero type movie we're going to get.
Right.
And if that happens, it's going to be probably geared more towards kids, or maybe even kid friendly, more than some of these other kind of military operation type movies. But at the same time, I don't know. I mean, what are you looking for, Hasbro? I mean, you're a toy company. Toys. Uh, M.A.S.K is just sitting there waiting for all these vehicles and, you know, figures that you could make versus you know, some tiny figures. And I don't know what that would do with Micronauts, but uh I just don't see it being like this hugely popular thing. I know it came over from, I think it came over from Japan or China, probably Japan, when that's how they got the rights to the toys. They essentially, you know, just like they did with Voltron and a lot of the other and toys, Transformers.
Yeah,
That came from
yeah. I'm
Japan.
just reading up here. It was from a Japanese toy company called Takara under the
Yeah,
company like under a company name of Mego, and it started in '76 is when the first toy
yeah.
line came out.
Mego was a pretty big toy company in the late '70s. They're the ones that had those really large figures with the fabric clothing. Like they did
Yep,
the um $6 million man and some others like that during that time. But I don't know. I don't see it. I don't see why Micronauts is the chosen one. The obvious one, which is GI Joe. Why did they choose Micronauts over Mask Ramen Visionaries? So I guess we'll find out, but at the same time, it kind of sucks too that they're not at least hinting or giving us the possibility of some of these other properties entering with these stories that saying they're just basically budget or didn't come up with anything good to produce into a film. So
right.
anyway, schedule, I
You
said
you stuttered there, like
okay.
right when you started out that sentence.
Okay. Well, let me just back up to what I was originally saying there with the film schedule. Bumblebee comes out this year and Transformers 6. They've also just announced last week that they're developing a Clue movie. I I'm guessing just kind of a one-off, based on the Clue property, which they did a Clue movie back in the mid '80s. Um, and then they're doing an animated Transformers movie, like one that it sounded like they were going to release to the theaters, which is going to be produced by Boulder Media. So that could be interesting to see if Transformers in an animated form can make an impact at the box office versus all these Michael Bay movies that they're just doing gangbusters. But I think what they're trying to do is take a well-known property and take the budget of an animated film versus a live action film, which I think those are up over 200 million to make, uh, and see how well it does at the box office. And then, the more success that they get from stuff like that, and some of the other stuff we were going to be talking about here from that Boulder Media Company, I believe out of Ireland, uh, that might lead to more chances or more risks, I guess you would say, being taken at that studio and on to Netflix or someplace like that with some of these properties. And I don't know, that's what I'm kind of pulling out of this information is either Mask has a chance in this untitled movie that could possibly be uh, a combined or shared movie, or push it into that Boulder Media uh, company and let them produce 10 episodes and throw it up on Netflix and see what happens, you know.
Right.
But one of the other stories was that not only Micronauts is getting a movie in 2020, but next year, 2019, they are going to do an animated series. They've got it listed in their, it was like a media guide I saw. And, you know, again, it looked kind of Toy Story ish, the concept art I saw. They have them riding on what looked like a remote control buggy car, Um, I don't know. I mean, again, I kind of like pushing this kind of thing in those properties toward animation first, rather than just making the movie. And maybe that's what they're banking on. That we'll get a little bit of an audience through this animated series, and then seeing them on the big screen is not quite a surprise. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
I honestly just don't know. I guess I haven't been following that the news story there as much as I should have. Um, for me, it's probably just a wait and see if it's actually going to materialize.
I think it's going to happen. I don't think there's any question about that. I think they're in the process of making the series, and I think it even said. Let me click over on this story from Flickering Myth, and I wanted to say it was like 20 some episodes that they were going to make for
And Microsoft
Micronauts.
rates a movie and shows, and we can't get. Well, we got a comic book. I guess we should be happy.
I don't know.
Well, you were saying that you're opening the link, so
Yeah, here it
I was
is.
slightly distracted here a little bit. I found a submission for Hasbro. Little three-step little thing. You have to read all. You're supposed to read everything, the fine print and all. I, that's one thing we haven't done. That Jason and I have not done is actually submitted our work to Hasbro. We didn't know exactly how to do it. I never dug into it. Um,
I've emailed them just trying to essentially find the right person to send it to, but they're not gonna they're not gonna tell you. And I did get a couple things. I emailed one person. I was digging deep into the web right around the 30th anniversary, and I found the actual Hasbro person who created that PowerPoint presentation that we originally found
mhm.
that had a mask logo in there. And I emailed her and I was, pretty much like, are you planning on making any kind of announcement or anything like that? Any plans for the 30th anniversary? And, this, I'm right for this, fan site. And it was just a real short reply back I got that was, thanks for noticing, and anything, that we will do will be released through, the normal, media releases, press releases that they do. So it wasn't really any. It was just kind of a bland response. I was happy to get a response, but
Right.
it's just been it's not really the right. If you're a movie writer, you have an agent, have connections to studios and stuff to get your script out there and at least take a look at. But obviously we're not that hardcore into writing movies. We've only written one.
True.
Yeah, so it's not, I I wouldn't I'm not holding anything against not being able to submit a script to Hasbro, in other words.
Right.
Anyway, I've got that story up for Micronauts, and here's the official synopsis. It says, when fate brings an unlikely team of alien space explorers to Earth in pursuit of the evil Baron Karza discovery, on our world, they are the size of action figures. The Micronauts are small heroes in a big world, but the stakes are higher than ever as their miniaturized size presents dangerous obstacles at every turn. Fortunately, they forged an alliance with teenager Cameron Ruck in their pursuit of justice. Although the Micronauts are small in stature, their bravery and adventurous spirits remain larger than life. And the story goes on to say it's the new series is being produced by Hasbro Studios. The first batch of 26 episodes set to go in production on 22 minutes each and are being targeted towards children ages 6 through 11. So they're hitting, if they're targeting that audience, that's obviously who you want to hit to sell toys to. I mean, that makes a lot of sense. And again, I'm a little harsh on the concept art because it is just concept art, but I don't know.
I don't know.
I
Like you said, we're kind of jaded basically because we're talking. This is Mask. It's supposed to be about Mask, but we have Hasbro here, who's the now parent company when it was before, DIC. You know,
mhm.
it's just it feels like we're being jaded. At least on my take. You know, I know we have worked hard. Whether we got the right ears or not is another story. I know we've worked hard as an entity. The fans have worked pretty hard at um, doing their part. Heck, even our colleague across the pond went so far as doing a petition to say, "Hey, wake up and do something." And they kind of just gave us a small little bone, which was the IDW comics, and that was
Mhm.
just enough to whet our appetite. And then pulled it after what 5 issues, 6 issues, I don't remember now. And it's
They made it to
disheartening.
10.
In my take, it's disheartening to see all these other entities, even to see GI Joe be rebirthed again. Come on, Hasbro. It's one of those just get a serious cup of coffee, wake up, and at least give us a good look. Don't just go, yeah, we'll get to it maybe. Come on, give us a good look. That's my
Yeah.
take. Sorry, I'm on a tangent, but it just
If you're a Visionaries fan, you're even more ticked because they haven't even been name dropped in all this
very
process.
true.
But so I guess it's nice that they were at least considering, or at least some stuff was written that just didn't feel like it was. Again, I don't know. I sometimes you get in a closed room and you get the writers together, and you're not doing your kind of market research, or you're not getting some outside people to, other than obviously probably Hasbro executives, to kind of bounce stuff off of. And again, you get movies like the first two GI Joes and like these recent Transformers films that a lot of people have been up in arms about, that they're ruining their childhood, that kind of a thing. I wouldn't go that far. Definitely not. It's more or less commercialized. In other words, it's put together to grab the interest of some kids and the parents who remember it, and they're just kind of banking on that rather than trying to really dig deeper and please the original fans, of the property that
Right.
remember it when it was first, created and came out, and that style. But they're trying to please everybody, which is a hard thing to do.
It is. It is.
They're still making money on the films. So my biggest thing is, okay, so they've announced the Micronauts, they've announced GI Joe. I don't think there's really a chance that GI Joe is going to tank, just based on the last two movies that really nobody was excited about, and they made their budget and more back worldwide. So I guess my biggest fear would be Micronauts just is a total bomb, and that just kind of pumps the brakes on everything.
True.
You know, um, I don't think a bomb at the box office would necessarily change their plans from this animation studio, because they are doing, like, the final point here was they're doing a new Transformers project, uh, coming off the Rescue Bots, which is hugely popular for them. Um, so I don't think that's going to necessarily would necessarily halt their animation plans, but uh, I really don't think there'd be a chance for M.A.S.K or ROM or really any of those secondary properties to have another chance at the big screen.
Right.
It's a huge failure. So,
I
and
gotta step away for a couple minutes. I'll be right back.
okay. Well, I'll keep talking just a little bit, and basically that Micronauts bomb would just be, I think, would eliminate all of that, because they're not going to be willing to take a chance on something that doesn't make bank at the box office. And I can't see them making like a $200 million Micronauts movie either. Be limited with the budget, and maybe even, just if it is more geared towards kids, you bring in some lesser name actors that are not gonna, and just kind of build it from there. So you're essentially playing safe, and you're not trying to turn Micronauts into Transformers, you know. So I guess that's my take on the whole situation. Yeah, I'm bummed that M.A.S.K is getting all of the, and ROM are getting the bad the bad publicity now. It just kind of, we haven't been on the air in 9 months, and I don't know, I kind of fizzled out a little bit there on just waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting. Oh, they've got to be making an announcement. Here it is, 2 years later. They made their announcement. M.A.S.K is not in it, so it's a little deflating for fans to see that, but kind of keep digging through the possibilities of M.A.S.K coming back and getting an animated series or movie, or at least a bit part in a movie like G.I. Joe. So yeah, I guess we're gonna kind of wind down here as Wyatt is gonna come back, and we'll kind of wrap this thing up. Didn't want to go too long, kind of ramble on, but would love your thoughts on what Hasbro is doing, and if you think that M.A.S.K it might possibly still be in those plans, even though it sounds like they've kind of written them out, quote unquote. So just, you can always comment on our site, on our social media, and maybe the next time we get on for a chat, we'll read back some of your comments. But we always like interacting with you guys. And again, I know it's been sparse over the last several months that haven't been on there, and mostly that's my fault. I've always tried to keep M.A.S.K at the forefront, and just with the life changes and everything, I haven't been able to pour in to M.A.S.K what I had normally done at my previous job and my responsibilities there. So you can blame that one on me. But at the same time, here we're back, and we've got some news coming out of our beloved Hasbro company. So that's what we're talking about now. We'd love to hear what you guys have to say. Situation as well, and it can be outside of M.A.S.K too. What do you think about this G.I. Joe film? What do you think they're going to do with it? Are they going to try to give us more of what we know, or are they going to just pretty much do a cash the check sequel to what they've already done? Which wouldn't surprise me. Wouldn't surprise me, really. And maybe what are your thoughts on this Untitled movie? They haven't really given us any information on. Could it be a shared universe kind of a movie, or maybe it's just maybe it's the Monopoly movie, or the Play-Doh movie. I mean, I've gone through Hasbro's list of a movie that they have announced over the last, I don't know, 5 years. If you go over to Wikipedia, it's there too. But they there's some stuff on there that's hilarious. There has been rumors of a Play-Doh movie. Okay. Where do you put that? You put that up on Netflix? Is it animated? Monopoly, there's been several stories and press releases that they're making a Monopoly movie. I've seen Hungry Hungry Hippos are on that list. Okay. Really, Hasbro? You're gonna try to make a movie out of that? I don't know. It's anything's possible for that untitled movie, and with Micronauts being number 2 on that list, it could be something crazy like that, and just go low budget. And I don't know. The animated movies now are just so huge, and you can turn pretty much anything, just release it at the right time, during the summer or during one of those lulls where there's not much kid stuff being released, and people go see it. People take their kids to go to the movies and see something they had really never heard about, even the kids. But if it's in animation and it's, friendly to kids and there's nothing else in the theater, it becomes a hit. Uh, there have been several movies that I've seen with my kids over the last, I don't know, few months, and I'm like, okay, that was 90 minutes of my life I'll never get back. Ones I did enjoy Captain Underpants. That was pretty funny the first go around. Now that's on Netflix and we've seen it 10 times, I'm like, okay, the fart jokes get a bit old. You still get to hear Weird Al at the end, so I'll watch it. Uh, it's just that kind of attitude. So, it could be something crazy like that, and they just figure, October's a slow month. It's right before Thanksgiving when there's usually a Disney release, or even Christmas, or DreamWorks, or one of those other bigger studios, Pixar, part of Disney. We'll just throw something in here and see if people go see it. So it could be something as simple as that, and maybe we're just digging too deep with what we want to happen. And maybe it if you're being real, Hasbro truly has canned that shared universe. But I don't know. It's just, that just struck me kind of funny after waiting 2 years, bringing in Vika Goldsman, who is one of the bigger name writers out there, and has done a lot. I believe he's the one that was pulled in for the Transformers movies on several of those. So, you put a writer's room together. I know a lot of it deals with concept, and you're bringing concepts and you're trying to sell concepts before you're actually writing. And maybe, they just couldn't grasp a concept that's good enough for some of these other properties, including M.A.S.K. Doesn't necessarily mean it's dead. They could bring somebody else in to, well, let's see what you can come up with, or they can find something on the internet. Maybe Wyatt and I should just post our movie out there and see if they like it and run with it. At this point, I think our friend Scott, who also wrote a M.A.S.K. movie, I think he finally did post his script out there. So maybe that's what we need to do. Just give him some ideas and give him more fan fiction come up with they'd like to see bringing it back. So looks like Wyatt's finally back, and I'll stop blabbing and we'll get back to wrapping this up. Welcome back.
Sorry, my son decided to have a headache and scream and kicking, and I had to, I won't say hold him down, but close to it.
Yeah. Well, after I was blabbing on and kind of talking through it, I came to the realization that maybe that untitled movie is just some crazy kids movie based on Play-Doh or Monopoly or Hungry Hungry Hippos or something.
Don't give them any more ideas. They first need to get M.A.S.K. in their head. Then they can do.
Dude, but the point was, you release a kids movie, no matter what it is, at the right time when there's nothing else in the theater, and it gets any kind of little buzz or anything, and it just takes off and becomes a hit.
It's
So
true.
yeah, maybe it could be something silly like that. I mean, if you go on Wikipedia and you look at all the Hasbro's properties that are quote unquote have been announced as movies, it's everything, man. I'm seriously, it is Play-Doh and Hungry Hungry Hippos and yeah, everything that they are. Uh, it's you know, if you can make a movie out of emojis, you can make pretty much anything,
Very, very true.
and it just could be something stupid like that, and we could be thinking too hard. But I don't know. As long as the possibility is there, I think we've kind of based this show and based our hopes as Masked fans on possibilities. When announcements like this happen, we'll just keep on speculating and hoping and until somebody, until the Hasbro CEO finally comes out and says, "All right, Mask fans, your stuff is dead. We're releasing the copyright and, you know, not
Right.
going to do anything anymore."
I
Then
certainly
we'll
hope not. Maybe
then
that's
we'll
what we need.
probably stop.
Well, maybe that's what we needed to do. Get on Twitter and start just blitzing him. You know, mask for 2021.
There you go.
Hey, there's
Well,
your
it'd probably be
Twitter
well, yeah.
hashtag mask for 2021.
Hashtag Mask 2021. Let's start that hashtag.
Let's do
We'll
that.
just copy like all of the Hasbro. I'm going to do that. I'm going to copy all of the Hasbro handles I can find. There's like the official Hasbro, and there's like Hasbro News, and there's I don't know. We'll copy. See if Boulder Media, the animation studio, has a Twitter account. We'll just blitz them. We'll just keep on blitzing them. Mask
Heck yeah.
2021.
Let's
That's
do
what
it.
we'll do.
That's like a good signature block too. Just saying.
Yeah. Well, you ready to kind of wrap this up for now?
Yeah, and again, want to apologize for our fans. We've been out for 8, 9, however many long months, but hopefully to get back into we want to get back in the groove. We want to get back into the actual episodes. We still have, I think, the other, not quite a half, about a third left to do. I think is
Yeah, I
what we
think
have left.
we are on episode 51.
Right. So I want to be
We
able to,
still need to 51 to 75 is what we got to do yet.
yeah. So do that. Hopefully we can get some more chat discussions with our buddies, other fellow agents. Maybe we can rattle a few virtual phones, whether it's Skype or what have you, and see if we can get other voice actors, maybe original writers from the episode, and get them on the show, like we've
I
done.
did get a request just not too long ago if we're going to get I think it was Mark Halloran who we were trying to get that one time,
Hmm.
and just didn't connect at the right time. But it'd be fun to get him in here. Who was Slyrax? He was the impressionist. Uh, I think I at one point did a blog post on his win on Star Search as a stand-up comedian. So
You did. I remember
it
watching.
would be it would be great to hear those stories and to get him on the show. So we're here, we're listening. We're not necessarily broadcasting like we should be, but we're hoping to get back in that groove and take some of your suggestions. And I was just on coming up to YouTube to pull up this broadcast. I saw some people had commented on some of the videos I made, the Thunderhawk tribute, and somebody suggested Alice Cooper's Poison for Stinger, I think it was.
That'd be actually.
It seemed pretty perfect.
I don't
It's
know how
just a
many
matter of
scenes we have of Scorpion though.
well, that's the thing, because I would still love to do a Rock You Like a Hurricane for Hurricane, but I don't think the Hurricane was in maybe a handful of episodes, so it's
Right.
going to be the same footage, kind of recycled and reversed. You know how they used to do
Oh yeah.
on all those shows where they, uh, you know, I think it was Rambo 2, where they go in and they blow up a village, and the next scene they just flip it over, and it's the same village that they blow up. It's just coming from the left side, you know. And
Well, that's what they used to do with Airwolf. And as much as that's one of my favorite shows, the editing sucked on that. The more I watched as an adult, the more I'm like, okay, who did not slap the editor hard enough?
yeah,
Oh, but anyway,
those glowing missiles, they always got me on
those
that
I
show.
actually liked. I thought even as a kid, I knew that wasn't real, but it was still kind of the cool effect that maybe they had the laser guided missiles, or you got to do it 90s
Yeah.
style laser.
All right. Well, this is our promise to you guys. We appreciate you listening. You know, the archive is still up,
Yep.
so you can go back and check out episodes and revisit those. And we actually do that on our own every once in a while, just to kind of keep the Mask spark going. But our promise is to get back in the MASKast studios a lot more this year, and to get back to reviewing episodes and interacting with you.
That sounds great. Well, like Jason said, we're closing it up, wrapping it up, and we want to thank you one and all again. Keep following us on Facebook at Agents of Mask, our website, agentsofmask.com, our Twitter, and I'm sure there's other ones that Jason has hooked us up with. I'm not the social media magnet like he is.
Those are the main ones.
Yeah. So join us again, and thanks for watching and listening to MASKast. I'm surprised.